The Auburn Tigers saw their ups and definitely saw their downs in year one under Hugh Freeze, but now with some more talent coming in, there is rising expectations for the Tigers in 2024. However, there are some questions to be answered. Offensive line, quarterback play, and replacing a lot of defensive talent. But can the Auburn Tigers be a sneaky SEC and potential college football playoff contender in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome back to prediction season. That's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams, which means I'm doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. And thank you for watching this video. It helps support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And if you would like to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, please like, comment, share, watch my other videos, and do anything you can to interact with the channel, because whatever you do to interact with it helps to support it. So I appreciate all your love and support. And with the Birmingham Stallions yesterday being crowned the three-time Spring League champion in the inaugural season of the UFL, it's time to get the main focus back to college football predictions. We're on to the Auburn Tigers. How do we do predictions around here? Well, I'm glad you asked. We're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and then at the end of the day, we'll go through and give the schedule a game-by-game preview and prediction. So without further ado, got a couple more footnotes for you before we start. Right over here are going to be the stats that the team either offensively or defensively put up last season. And for your viewing pleasure, of course, right below the team's logo, right down there, I put the team's coaching staff. So let's start with the most important position on the field. That's the quarterback room, and it was a position that Auburn had severely lacking last season. It just was not a great quarterback room, and that 162 passing yards per game was one of the country's worst in 2023. Robbie Ashford has gone through the transfer portal. He is off to South Carolina. 145 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on 27 passes thrown for him last season. Only 14 of those were completions. So you do get your primary starter back in Peyton Thorne. Had a great season in 2021, had a pretty decent season in 2022, coming over to this Auburn program thinking, hey, maybe he can provide a lift to our quarterback room. And he almost had 6,000 yards of production, a 3,200-yard season, a 2,600-yard season in 2021 and 2022, respectively. A lot of fans here in Auburn were hoping that that production was going to continue in 2023. It didn't. 1,755 yards was all he could muster in 2023, 16 touchdowns and 10 interceptions on 61% completion percentage. You do have some other quarterbacks in this room, but Peyton Thorne is still the starter with this program. How much can he improve? That is a huge question to answer offensively for the Auburn Tigers in 2024. If Peyton Thorne can get back to playing like he did in 2021 and 2022 when he was with the Michigan State Spartans, that's going to provide some life into this offense for the Auburn Tigers. But we got to talk about what else is around the quarterback position, because that matters too. And in the running back room, well, you didn't really lose anyone notable. Jarquez Hunter is coming back, your leading rusher at 909 yards, 7 touchdowns last year. You also do get Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb back, but I do need to say a few words on Brian Beatty. And I'm sorry for the sudden tone shift, but there was an incident that happened to where there was a shooting that broke out that ended up killing his brother and injuring Brian really, really badly. Thankfully, he has been able to make a pretty good recovery. He is out of the ICU as of a couple days ago, I do believe. And the importance right now is not of whether or not he's going to be in football ready condition by the time the season comes. The important thing right now is that he is okay. He is alive, and no matter the role that he plays on this football team this year, I had to include him on this list, because if he does play football, he's a really, really good player. But he is alive. He survived a harrowing experience, and my thoughts and feelings and everything go out to that family. So thankfully, Brian Beatty is okay, still remains a member of this Auburn football program. We'll see if he gets on the field in 2024. The hope is that he does, and it would be a great story. But again, the important thing is that he is okay. And while there's no easy way to transition from that, we're now going to move on to talking about these wide receivers, because it is a pretty overhauled room for the Auburn Tigers. Shane Hooks is gone due to graduation. He only had Oh, sorry, looking at the wrong thing. Only had 10 catches for 144 yards last year, yet was the team's fifth leading receiver. No one in this receiving room last year had over 400 yards, and you do lose a couple really talented pieces to the transfer portal. Javarius Johnson has gone over to UCF. Jay Fair is gone to, I believe it is USC. That was your second and third leading receivers from last season, both of them over 300 yards. You also are losing Malcolm Johnson Jr., Amari Kelly, and Coy Morris, some depth pieces in this wide receiver room that have now found lives with other programs as well. As Tyler Fromm, who was a tight end that entered the transfer portal, only had 3 catches for 21 yards last season. So let's talk about the pass catching room for the Auburn Tigers. You do get Caleb Burton, the third back, had 226 yards. 226 tackles would be insane. 226 yards on 16 catches last season. And then you do have Camden Brown coming back to this room as well. He was another guy that had over 100 yards last year, but the wide receiver room was missing some pop. So they went in the transfer portal, and they got themselves a good one. Keandre Lambert-Smith had a career year last season, 53 catches, a career high, 673 yards, a career high, tied a career high with 4 receiving touchdowns, and looking to exceed those numbers in this offense in Auburn in 2024. You also are getting Robert Lewis, Sam Jackson, a couple other transfers, and some high-impact freshmen in Cam Coleman and Bryce Kane that could play some pretty big minutes for the Tigers in 2024. Then you talk about your tight end room. Rivaldo Fairweather comes back. He is a former FIU transfer that was the leading receiver last year. Again, you hopefully will see an uptick in production from him this season, just because that pass game is expected to improve. 394 yards, 6 touchdowns for Fairweather last season. Also led the team in receptions with 38. You also do get Luke Deal, Brandon Frazier back, and Rico Walker is a transfer that now enters this program. And with Gunnar Britton, Avery Jones, and Cameron Stutz gone to the NFL, 3 of your better offensive linemen from a season ago, Dylan Wade, Connor Liu, Jeremiah Wright, Isaiah Miller, and Tate Johnson all come back, while Percy Lewis is a Mississippi State transfer that enters this room. Quite simply, when you figure out the offense, it is as simple as this. The wide receiver room has some good talent. Keandre Lambert-Smith will probably end up being that number 1 target. You have a very reliable tight end in Rivaldo Fairweather. The running back room is really good, led by Hunter. The key to this offense in 2024, how much does Peyton Thorne improve? How much does this offensive line improve? The offensive line gave up 34 sacks a season ago, and Peyton Thorne just had downright atrocious numbers. If he can improve his play and get back to the 2021-22 version of Peyton Thorne, and this offensive line starts to be a little bit better in pass pro, this is going to be an offense that I think is going to shock some people in 2024. But now we have to go over to talking about this defense, because while the offense has some question marks on definitely what's going to improve, what's going to get better, the defense definitely has its room to improve as well. But on the defensive side, it's more about filling in those gaps, because they lost a lot of talent from 2023, and we got to start out with the defensive line. Justin Rogers, Marcus Harris, and Mosiah Nasili-Kite are all gone to the NFL. That was led by Marcus Harris. Even though Justin Rogers was a higher draft pick than him, Marcus Harris was the 5th leading tackler on this defense last year and led the team in sacks, 40 tackles, 7 sacks last season. Justin Rogers had himself a pretty good season last year, 17 tackles, and then Nasili-Kite, 10 tackles for him last year, and Steven Sings, the depth piece on the defensive line, is off to find a new program through the transfer portal. So Keldrick Falks, Zycavius Walker, Jason Jones, they're all going to be coming back to this defensive line. While you do get a ton of transfers into this defensive line room, the 2 most notable to me were Trill Carter coming over from Texas and Gage Keys coming over from the Kansas Jayhawks. I might have had those backwards. I did not. Yes, Trill Carter from Texas, Gage Keys coming over from Kansas. Philip Bliddy is the highest rated transfer coming into this room. He is over from Indiana, but it's expected that Carter and Keys are probably going to play some bigger roles on the defensive line. Again, there are more defensive linemen returning, more defensive transfers coming back to this program, but those are the 5 names there that I think are going to have the biggest impact, especially some of those 3 returners and those 2 transfers that are on screen. Your linebacker room does lose a couple guys due to graduation. Larry Nixon III is going to be gone. He was tied for the 2nd leading tackler on the team last season with 50 of them. You also are losing Elijah McAllister. Both those guys graduated, while Cam Riley and Wesley Steiner both had pretty solid seasons last year. Riley, 31 tackles, 2.5 sacks. He's off to Florida State. And then Steiner last season had a double-digit tackle year, 15 of them to be exact. He has found a new home with the Washington State Cougars. So your linebacker room does lose some solid pieces, but really returns a lot of their top talent. Eugene Asante and Jalen McLeod were top 3 tacklers on the team last year. Your best defensive player on this team is probably Eugene Asante. Great to get him back. 86 tackles, 5 sacks a season ago. Jalen McLeod last year tied for that second place with 50 tackles and 5.5 sacks last year. So besides Marcus Harris, who is gone, those were your top 2 sack men from last season. They both come back. Austin Keys is back to the room. You get Dorian Mossey, who's a Duke transfer. That brings some really good talent into this room, as well as some freshmen in DeMarcus Riddick and Jamonta Walker. Not Walker, Waller, my apologies. Misread that last name. That could see big playing time in 2024. Your defensive back room does lose some pretty good talent as well. Nehemiah Pritchett is going to be a big name that leaves this room. 22 tackles, 3 passes defended, 1 interception last season, but not as big as DJ James. The really, really good corner had 38 tackles, 10 passes defended last season, and was a very huge piece to this pass defense for Auburn. He is since now going to be playing on Sundays. You also do lose some guys through the transfer portal, as J.D. Rhyme, however you say that last name, I apologize, and Colton Hood, both depth pieces in that room. Nonetheless, they are cornerback losses. And then your safety room, Jalen Simpson and Zion Puckett are going to be gone. Simpson and Puckett, both top 10 tacklers, 38 for Simpson, 37 for Puckett. 5 passes defended between the 2 of them, 3 for Simpson, 2 for Puckett, and Simpson led the way in interceptions last year with 4 of them. Puckett had 2, which was second on the team. Again, a team that only picked off 12 passes, so you lose half of them last season there between Simpson and Puckett. You also are losing a lot of guys to the transfer portal in Donovan Coffin, Marquise Gilbert, and Austin Osbury. So let's talk about this defensive back room in 2024. They were able to supplement some pieces through the transfer portal, but Keontae Scott, Kayan Lee, and J.C. Hart are back in the cornerback room. Antonio Kite is in through the portal. And then in your safety room, Caleb Wooden, Sylvester Smith, and Champ Anthony are all back, while Jaron Thompson comes in through the transfer portal. No losses on special teams, as kickers are people too, so let's show them some love. Oscar Chapman is back to do the punting duties, and Alex McPherson, who made all of his field goal attempts and extra points, is coming back to the Auburn Tigers in 2024. You talk about this defense, and yes, the number one thing with this defense is trying to replace all the talent that they lost. But it's still a pretty talented defensive side. Defensive line will be solid, especially with all those transfers coming in. Asante and McLeod were 2 of your better defensive players from last season. A lot of your top defensive back talent is gone, so that might be the biggest question mark here on this team. But it still could be a pretty solid defense in 2024, and a defense that will keep this Tiger team competitive throughout this schedule that we will go ahead and break down now. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics. That's that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that, well, I think the Tigers are going to win pretty easily. Any game in yellow is going to be a close, competitive game, but the Tigers will be able to pull it out, and red is a loss. They do not leave Jordan-Hare Stadium for the first 5 weeks of the season, and I have them going like this. They will beat the Alabama A&M. I believe they are the Bulldogs without trouble before you go into the game against Cal. Now, Cal, interesting team this season. I think Cal's got a lot of really good talent offensively, defensively. This was a road game for Auburn last year. They were able to come out with the win, not without a fight though. Cal was able to put up a pretty good fight against this Auburn team, and I think they're going to be able to do so again in 2024. However, if Cal couldn't beat Auburn at home, I don't see them going into Jordan-Hare Stadium and beating the Auburn Tigers. That's a very tough place to play, and the new ACC team will, I think, suffer their second loss in as many years to the Auburn Tigers in week 2 of the college football season. Auburn starts out 3-0 with a win against the New Mexico Lobos, a group of 5 team that, look, is getting better, and I think there's some really good talent there with that New Mexico squad, but the Lobos are nowhere near the talent of the Auburn Tigers, and I think that defense will do what they need to do to shut them down. So then you enter the game against the Arkansas Razorbacks, and what do you know? I got the Tigers winning this one well. Pretty good start to the season for Auburn. Arkansas will be able to fight this year. I think the Razorbacks are going to be competitive in a lot of games that a lot of people don't necessarily expect them to be competitive in. That being said, I don't think the win-loss record is going to quite be there for the Razorbacks this season. A lot of people questioning how Sam Pittman still had his job. You lose KJ Jefferson. You lose a ton of other offensive and defensive players through the transfer portal. Some are gone to the league. This is an Arkansas team just feeling like they're trying to scrape together something. And again, I think they're going to be pretty competitive in 2024. I just don't see that leading to many wins, and especially going on the road to play in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I think the Auburn Tigers will win that one. And then you get the game against Oklahoma. And this is the part of the schedule now. You're entering week 5, and then you have this lengthy road trip, which, look, you play 5 straight games at home. The schedule makers made Auburn pay for it by having 3 straight road games, 2 of them against teams that absolutely could make the college football playoff. But when you talk about this Oklahoma side here, I really like what the Sooners have in 2024. I think an improving defense is not necessarily where you start, but I'm going to start here. I think that defense is going to get better, and it'll help slow down this Auburn run game that I think, once again, will be the focal point of the Tigers' offense in 2024. You take a look at what Oklahoma has offensively, and it's loaded with talent, especially in that wide receiver room. Yes, you lose Drake Stoops, but everyone else comes back. Deion Burks is a gem coming in from the transfer portal. Jackson Arnold is going to be at quarterback, and although he isn't super proven yet, I think he has all the tools and makings to be a stud. I think the Auburn defense has trouble with this Oklahoma offense, and the Sooners walk out of Jordan-Hare Stadium with a win, handing the Tigers their first loss of the college football season, and what I think is going to start a losing streak for this team, because you're not beating Georgia, especially on the road. The Bulldogs are one of the most talented teams in the country this year, and while the Tigers may be able to put up somewhat of a fight, I'm expecting a huge year for Carson Beck, and this defense is still going to be one of the country's best. Auburn goes on the road and loses to Georgia, and I think they go on the road and lose to Missouri as well. Same sort of problem I think Auburn's going to have in this game with the Oklahoma Sooners. The main reason that I see the Sooners pass heavy offense, plaguing Auburn so much is because of all the talent they lost in their defensive back room. While they still have some solid talent here, I definitely may be expected to take a step back in 2024. Missouri is another team that's going to have a really good pass game. Luther Burden is back. Pretty much that entire wide receiver room is coming back, apart from a couple depth pieces through the transfer portal. Brady Cook is coming back. They replaced Cody Schrader with 2 phenomenal former Sun Belt running backs in Carroll and Noel from Georgia State and App State, respectively. And even though the defense does lose defensive coordinator Blake Baker, along with a ton of talent, I think that offense is going to be good enough to win them a lot of games. It wins them this one, and Missouri beats Auburn to hand them their 3rd straight loss, and what easily could be their 4th straight loss is coming up with a road game against the Kentucky Wildcats. However, Auburn does have a lot of tricky road games this year. If you look at their road slate, if you look at just their road slate in 2024, Georgia, Missouri, Kentucky, Alabama could easily lose all of those games. I think they win at least one of them, and to me, Kentucky is by far the most winnable game on the road. Kentucky is losing a ton of talent through the NFL, as well as some through the transfer portal as well. You are losing Ray Davis, the former Vanderbilt transfer, who is really good for them at running back. Devin Leary at quarterback is gone. There's a lot of defensive talent leaving that team as well. And I think Auburn's going to be able to make this one a really, really competitive fight. And I think they're going to come away with the win here. I think Peyton Thorne is going to have 1 or 2 games this year where he really shows out and shines. This is going to be one of those games as Auburn gets a huge win on the road to start yet another winning streak, because I see them being able to beat the Vanderbilt Commodores. Sorry to all my Commodore fans out there. I just still don't think Vanderbilt's at the level to compete with a lot of teams in the SEC in 2024. And after their second bye week, by the way, their first one is coming in between those Georgia and Missouri games, they will be able to beat the ULM Warhawks, as well as ULM, an FCS level, or not an FCS, a group of 5 level team that's nowhere near the standard that this Auburn Tigers program is at. However, I do think now Auburn's sitting at 7-3. You have a chance to get a really good win at home against the Texas A&M Aggies, and I don't think it happens. I think you end up losing that game. Now, that is a 50-50 game for me. Flip a coin, toss it in the air, slap your hand on it, and whether it comes up heads or tails, that's the team you pick. This game really could go either way for me, but I am going with the Aggies because I trust Connor Weigman to be a little bit more of a developed quarterback than Peyton Thorne this year. And while I know the talent that Peyton Thorne possesses and Keandre Lambert-Smith and Rivaldo Fairweather, I just seem to trust this Texas A&M team more. I think they have a little bit more talent. I think that defense is going to take a step up this year. I think Mike Elko's put together a really, really nice squad with a really darn good coaching staff, and the Aggies are going to pull off the road win in Jordan-Hare Stadium against the Auburn Tigers. And then at the end of the season, I don't see Auburn beating the Alabama Crimson Tide for this specific reason. I think Jalen Milroe is going to be the difference maker in this game. And while, yes, it's the Iron Bowl and Auburn's going to put up a tremendous fight, and yes, Nick Saban is gone. And yes, so is Caleb Downs. And yes, so is a lot of that wide receiver room, a lot of other talent as well. Alabama's got some concerns on the offensive line, but Milroe will be the difference maker, and Bama still got a lot of nice pieces to work with. And by the way, that young secondary probably not going to get effective as much if this Auburn pass game isn't improved. So I got 7-5 for the Tigers here. Very tough schedule, but a step in the right direction for sure for Hugh Freeze and company in 2024. Let me know what you think about the Tigers in the comment section below. We're about to do the Nebraska Cornhuskers coming up next. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.